Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Derek. After my wife rejected my advances for several nights for months, I got fed up and decided to avoid her every morning. This led to something none of us saw coming. My love languages are physical touch and quality time. I enjoyed holding the person I love while we shared quality time. That's how I'm wired, and that's how I love. My wife Lauren is aware of all these, and she reciprocated this energy. When we first got together, when we were dating, and through the early years of marriage, she'd initiate affection as much as I did. We'd fall asleep tangled up in each other, wake up the same way. We got married when I was 27 and she was 26. I worked for a commercial construction firm. The steady income from there made the long hours bearable. Lauren worked in human resources for a healthcare company. It's also a demanding job, but she generally keeps regular hours. I worked hard to provide everything we needed by making sure the bills were paid on time, that we had a nice apartment, and could take occasional vacations. I took pride in being a good provider and a dependable husband. For the first few years, although no marriage is perfect, things were good. We'd have dinner together most nights, talk about our days, and make plans for weekends. The physical intimacy was natural and frequent. We were partners in every sense. My wife, Lauren, became more distant around our 6th anniversary. She was gradually pulling away, and it started with the slow death of our intimacy. She'd come home from work tired, which was understandable. I do get tired too. But when I try to connect physically, even just putting my arm around her on the couch, she'd subtly pull away. At first, she'd have reasons. She was exhausted from a long day, had a headache, wasn't feeling well, just wanted to go to sleep early. I understood. Everyone has off days, stressful weeks, times when they're not in the mood. So I tried to make things easier for her. On days I got home before her, I'd cook dinner so she didn't have to. I take over more of the household chores when I am free without being asked. Gave her space when she said she needed it. I thought I was being supportive, being a good husband. But weeks turned into months, and nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. Every night, when we'd go to bed, I'd try to connect. Not always sexually, sometimes just wanting to hold her, to feel close to her, to maintain that physical bond that had always been important to us. And every night, she'd reject me in small ways. Sometimes she'd roll away to her side of the bed, back turned to me. Other times, she'd say, "Not tonight, please." It felt like I was bothering her just by existing. Sometimes she'd pretend to be asleep when I tried to initiate intimacy, her breathing too controlled to actually be unconscious. I'd lie there on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark, feeling rejected and alone despite being inches away from my wife. The rejections accumulated. I stopped trying as often. Self-preservation, I suppose. Why keep reaching out when you're constantly pushed away? But the damage was already done. The emotional distance had taken root and was growing like poison ivy, spreading through every part of our marriage. I started sleeping closer to the edge of the bed, as far from her as I could get without falling off. Some nights I'd stay up late watching TV, didn't want to disturb her, and sleep on the couch instead. The silence between us became oppressive. We'd be in the same room, but might as well have been on different planets. Then one morning, after another night of lying awake, feeling unwanted and alone, I got up before dawn, made coffee quietly, got dressed, and left for work without waking Lauren, without trying to give her the morning kiss that had once been routine. I got to the office at 6:30, a full hour and a half before I needed to be there. Sat in my car in the parking lot, finishing my coffee, not quite ready to start work. That became my pattern. I'd wake up at 5, be gone by 5:45, arrive at work ridiculously early, and sit in my truck or at my desk doing nothing, just killing time before the day officially starts. My coworkers started commenting on it. One of the other project managers joked that I was making everyone else look bad by showing up before the sun. I just shrugged it off, said I was trying to get ahead on some projects. The truth was simpler and sadder. I was avoiding my own home and avoiding my wife. If she rejected me every night, then I'd avoid her every morning. I didn't decide this consciously, it just happened. My body and mind were protecting themselves from more rejection. I stopped texting her during the day the way I used to. Now my phone stayed silent except for work-related communications. I'd stay late at the office too. Not because I had extra work, though I'd find things to do. Just because going home meant facing the cold silence, the distance, the constant reminder that my wife didn't want me anymore. 2 weeks into this new pattern, I came home around 10:30 one night. Later than usual. Lauren was still up, sitting on the couch. Usually, she'd be in bed by that time. She looked up when I walked in. "Are you mad at me?" I stopped, surprised by the direct question. Looked at her for a moment. "No," I said finally. "Just tired." Then I walked past her to the guest room where I'd been sleeping most nights lately. Closed the door. Heard her stay on the couch for a while before eventually going to our bedroom alone. I wasn't mad. That wasn't the right word. I was exhausted, defeated, and done trying. What had begun as her rejecting me every night had become me avoiding her every morning, every evening, and every moment I could. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. I'd finally accepted what had been obvious for months. I was the only one fighting for this marriage. The only one trying to maintain any kind of connection. And I couldn't do it alone anymore. Lauren started noticing the difference. The absence of affection she'd taken for granted when she had it. I'd catch her watching me sometimes, looking confused or hurt when I'd leave for work without saying goodbye. When I'd come home and go straight to the guest room. When I'd sit in the guest room reading on my phone rather than joining her on the couch. The apartment was filled with heavy tension. We'd be in the same space, this uncomfortable awareness between us. But neither of us knew how to address it. Or maybe we knew how, but didn't want to. Because once you start that conversation, you can't put the words back. For weeks into this cold war of mutual avoidance, Lauren confronted me. It was a Saturday morning. I was up early, as usual, making coffee, about to leave for the gym I'd joined specifically to have somewhere else to be when I am not working. She came into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, looking like she hadn't slept well. "Why are you acting like I don't exist?" I looked at her while pouring coffee into my travel mug. Took a moment before responding. "You started it," I said calmly. "Now you know how it feels." Her face showed confusion. Genuine, as far as I could tell. "Started what?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I almost laughed. Almost. But there was nothing funny about any of this. I set down the coffee pot and turned to face her fully. "For the past months, you've rejected me every single night. Every time I've tried to touch you, hold you, be close to you in any way. Every time I've reached out, you've pushed me away." I kept my voice level. "You'd say you were tired. You had a headache. You just wanted to sleep. You'd roll away or pretend to be asleep or tell me not tonight like I was some annoying stranger instead of your husband." Lauren opened her mouth, but I kept going. Week after week. Month after month. I tried to be understanding. Tried to make things easier for you. Took on more around the house, gave you space, stopped pushing. But nothing changed. I picked up my travel mug. So yeah, I stopped trying. Started leaving early, coming home late. Sleeping in the guest room. Avoiding you the same way you've been avoiding me. Now you're upset because you're on the receiving end. I headed toward the door. She followed me into the living room. I didn't realize it was that bad. I didn't mean to. It doesn't matter anymore. I cut her off. I'm okay with how things are now. You wanted distance. You have it. Well, I'm not okay with it. Her voice rose slightly. This isn't what I want. I really looked at her for the first time in weeks. She looked tired, but I felt too empty to care much. You should have thought about that before, I said quietly. Then left for the gym. I expected that to be the end of it. But that night, when I came home around 8, Lauren was waiting in the living room again. "We need to talk," she said as soon as I walked in. "Really talk." I sighed. Wanted to retreat to the guest room. But something about her expression made me pause. "Fine," I said. Sat in the armchair across from where she sat on the couch. Maintaining distance even while agreeing to talk. She took a breath. Started slowly. You're right. About the rejection. I didn't realize how much I've been doing it, but you're right. I waited. Didn't respond. But there was a reason, she continued. Something you did that upset me. And you never apologized for it. So I held back. I felt confusion and anger stir. What are you talking about? She talked about how I corrected her in front of everyone at an event. She claimed to be telling a story, and I interrupted to say she had the details wrong. Made her look stupid in front of our friends. I searched my memory, but couldn't specifically recall that moment. I could imagine it happening. I did that sometimes, corrected details when they seemed wrong. Usually didn't mean anything by it. And that's why you've been rejecting me for months. My voice came out sharper than intended. Because I corrected you once at a party? You embarrassed me, she said defensively. And you never apologized. Never even acknowledged that it bothered me. Because you never told me it bothered you. I responded, standing up, frustration breaking through my earlier calm. You just started pulling away, rejecting me every night, making me feel unwanted in my own marriage. For months. I looked at her, really seeing the situation clearly for the first time. You held a grudge for almost a year. Punished me every single day for something I didn't even know had upset you. Instead of just talking to me, you shut down all physical affection. Made me feel like you didn't love me anymore. My voice got quieter. How could someone who claims to love me do that? Harbor that kind of resentment for so long without saying a word? Lauren's eyes filled with tears. I was waiting for you to notice. To ask what was wrong. To figure it out. I'm not a mind reader, Lauren. I'm just a guy who wanted to feel loved by his wife. Who tried everything he could think of to make you happy. Who blamed himself for months, thinking he was the problem. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. It doesn't matter anymore, I said finally. What's done is done. I'm okay with how things are now. But I'm not, she said again, tears falling now. I don't want this. This cold, distant thing we've become. I miss you. You made a choice, I said flatly. This is the consequence. We sat in silence for a long moment. Please, she said quietly. Can we try to fix this? I wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to just file for divorce and be done with this marriage that had become a source of pain rather than comfort. But another part hesitated. I don't know if I can trust you, I said honestly. You punished me for months over something I didn't even know about. How do I know you won't do it again? I won't, she said. I see now how wrong that was. How I should have just talked to you. You should have, I agreed. But you didn't. And now here we are. She wiped her eyes. What if we tried counseling? Marriage therapy? I almost said no immediately. The thought of sitting in some therapist's office talking about our feelings made me want to leave the state. But I also knew we couldn't fix this alone. We'd proven that over the past year. Fine, I said reluctantly. We can try therapy. But I'm not making any promises about what comes after. She nodded quickly. That's fair. I'll find someone. Set up appointments. I stood up. I'm going to bed. In the guest room? She asked quietly. Yeah, I said. In the guest room. True to her word, Lauren found a marriage counselor within a few days. A woman in her 50s who specializes in couples therapy. Our first session was awkward as hell. Sitting on a couch in a stranger's office, trying to explain how our marriage had deteriorated into this cold stalemate. The marriage counselor asked a lot of questions about our history, our communication patterns, and what we each felt was missing. I explained the year of rejection, how it had eroded my sense of being wanted or valued, and how I finally stopped trying because I couldn't keep banging my head against a wall. Lauren explained her resentment about the party incident, how she'd expected me to notice her pulling away and address it, how she'd been waiting for an apology that never came. The marriage counselor listened without judgment, then pointed out what should have been obvious. We'd both been waiting for the other person to do something while doing nothing ourselves. Lauren had expected me to read her mind and apologize for something I didn't know bothered her. I'd expected her to communicate what was wrong instead of just withdrawing affection. We'd both failed at basic communication. created this mess through assumptions and expectations rather than actual conversation. The therapy sessions over the following weeks were difficult. Dr. Rhodes pushed us to be honest about feelings we'd been avoiding, made us practice communicating clearly instead of expecting the other person to guess. She had us do exercises, setting aside specific time each week just to talk about how we were feeling, using I statements instead of accusations, listening to actually understand rather than just waiting to respond. It was uncomfortable, sometimes painful, but slowly, incrementally, things started shifting. I learned that my tendency to correct Lauren in front of others, something I'd never thought much about, actually did bother her, made her feel diminished. It had been building for a while before the party incident finally pushed her over the edge. I apologized genuinely, said I'd never meant to make her feel that way, and would work on being more aware of it. She apologized too, for withdrawing instead of talking, for expecting me to read her mind, for letting resentment build until it poisoned our entire relationship. We talked about the intimacy issues. The marriage counselor helped us understand that physical rejection creates emotional wounds that don't heal quickly, that rebuilding that trust and connection would take time and patience. Lauren admitted she'd been using intimacy as a weapon, withholding it as punishment. The marriage counselor made clear how toxic that was, how it turned something that should bond partners into a tool for control. We started small, holding hands while watching TV, sitting close instead of on opposite ends of the couch. Quick kisses, goodbye in the morning. Nothing over the top, just slowly reintroducing touch and affection in low-pressure ways. After about 2 months of weekly therapy, I moved back into our bedroom. Not because everything was fixed, but because the guest room had become a symbol of our separation, and we both wanted to move past it. We set ground rules. I'd respect it if she genuinely wasn't in the mood for intimacy. She'd communicate clearly rather than just pulling away. Neither of us would use affection as a weapon or reward system. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks. Nights when old patterns would resurface, and one of us would retreat into old defensive behaviors. But we caught them faster now, talked through them instead of letting resentment build. By 6 months of therapy, things felt different. Not back to how they were, but better in new ways. We'd learned to actually communicate instead of expecting the other person to guess, to address problems when they were small instead of letting them fester, to be honest about feelings even when it was uncomfortable. The physical intimacy returned, too, gradually, naturally, without the pressure or expectation that had surrounded it before. Looking back now, a year after that Saturday morning confrontation in the kitchen, I understand so much more. I learned that rejection, especially from someone you love, doesn't just hurt in the moment. It accumulates, builds into a wall between partners that gets harder to tear down with each added brick. I learned that expecting your partner to read your mind is a recipe for resentment. That if something bothers you, you have to actually say it out loud. No one can fix a problem they don't know exists. I learned that withholding affection as punishment is one of the most toxic things you can do in a relationship. That it turns love into a transaction and erodes the foundation of trust and safety partners need. I learned that avoidance is easier than communication, but ultimately more destructive. Running away from problems just lets them grow larger. Most importantly, I learned that marriage isn't about keeping score or waiting for the other person to make the first move. It's about showing up consistently, communicating honestly, and working as a team even when it's hard. We're not perfect now. Still have disagreements and rough patches. Still occasionally fall into old patterns before catching ourselves. But we're aware now. We talk. We address things instead of letting them fester. We choose connection over being right. Some people might say we should have just divorced. That the year of rejection and avoidance proved we weren't right for each other. Maybe they're right. Maybe we would have been happier starting over with other people. But I don't regret trying to save it. Don't regret the work we put into rebuilding what we'd broken. Because I learned something valuable through all of it. Relationships don't fail. because people stop loving each other. They fail because people stop communicating, stop trying, stop choosing each other every day. We'd stop doing all of that. Had let hurt feelings and unspoken resentments replace the connection we once had. But we found our way back. Through therapy, through difficult conversations, and through the slow work of rebuilding trust. She rejected me every night for almost a year. I avoided her every morning in response. We both nearly destroyed our marriage through our own fear and pride, and our inability to just talk to each other. But we didn't. We saved it. Together. And that's something worth holding on to.